Hey YouTube, long time no see. The particularly observant amongst you may notice that I'm not in the kitchen anymore. This is because the big reason that my last upload was in August and then I vanished, I moved. So I'm no longer in the dining room. Yippee! I have my own bedroom. Now, if you wondered where the fuck I was throughout most of 2023, me too. But here is some stories gathered about a very, very special thing in my heart, a shitbox truck. Alright, so buckle your fuckles, get cozy, I'm back. It's great to be back. I'm just gonna Wendigoon style talk at this camera for the next like 20 minutes. So, it's rewind time. In October of 2021, I experienced what was probably one of like the top 3 worst weeks of my life because my great-grandpa, who I had a really great relationship with, died. And then I went on a drive thinking, well, at least I have that car I worked super hard for, and then it got totaled. Not a good week for another pen. Pretty miserable. However, at my great-grandpa's funeral, still no car, I'm like, oh man, I need a car. And my uncle, who owned his own car shop, but just is not quite cut out to be a businessman, or probably a functional human being, was like, well, don't you worry, dude. I've got a car that you can buy if you're just willing to wait for an engine to be put in it. And I went, damn, bro, that sounds sick. What kind of car is it? And he went, it's a 1990 Volkswagen Corrado with a VR6 swap. So my dumbass was like, dude, that sounds fucking awesome. I'm buying it. That was a mistake. So fast forward, February of 2023, I had just moved out of my parents' house, and I had no job when I did so. You can debate the wisdom of this however much you want. Pretty justified moving out when I did. It was just really shitty that I had to do it when I did it. And my roommate also doesn't have a job. So we are 2 broke young adults. And I very foolishly go, well, I have my daily driver, and I have the Corrado. Car's paid for in full, so really I should be able to go get it, right? Wrong. So I call up my uncle, I'm like, can I have my car? And he goes, yeah, dude. It's close to being done, dude. Just buy some tires so you can drive it off when you get here, dude. And I go, okay. And I throw like my last $300 at a pair of tires and a bus ticket to Salt Lake City. And I go to Salt Lake City and I get there and I'm like, my car's ready, right? And he goes, nah, dude. Your car's not ready, dude. I'm not finishing it, guy. I go, well, what the fuck is this? You know, I need my car. I am not leaving without a vehicle. He is not willing to finish the vehicle I paid for. And so, a beautiful arrangement is agreed upon, because what he does have that runs and drives is a 1994 Ford Ranger XL. And for those of you who don't know what this glorious sack of shit is, a Ford Ranger is the Mazda Miata of trucks, especially the XL, because it only comes in rear-wheel drive. So it's this little 2-door, tiny little thing that just spins and slides. The Ford Ranger's good fun. He had tried to sell me this car a year ago, but I was like, nah, that thing sounds like a piece of shit, because this Ford Ranger, who I named Steve, is so lowered it has front camber. Front camber means that your car fucking eats tires. That's cute. Has no rear brakes. That's cute. Power steering doesn't work. That's it. That's cute. Cracked windshield. That's cute. Rusted out bed. That's cute. And a laundry list of other problems. He's like, yeah, I'll finish your Corrado when it's warm, dude. And I drive away in Steve. And so begins 10 months of absolute fuckery. So for some context, I've always been a driving enthusiast, but being an automotive sporting fan is like being a Tool fan. Anyone who likes it and is cool about it isn't really going to talk about it that much, because other automotive enthusiasts are fucking annoying. There's no way around it, alright? Have you ever been to a car meet? But I digress. My hatred for some of the car community aside, I've always loved driving. It's engaging. It's fun. Okay, so the first car that I buy for myself after the car accident is a 2003 Subaru Forester. This is a 5-speed manual transmission, 4-cylinder, no turbo. I had so much fucking fun with it. You know, I bought it in auction for $700, threw like 200 more bucks into parts to get it running, and I was just driving that fucker around. I would take it over dirt and mountain overpasses and time it every morning on my way to work. I had fun. So a lot of what I did in this car was what any 18-year-old who spent $900 on a fun little car would do, which is learn to drive like a fucking knob. So I learned how to correct a lot of spinouts, a lot of stuff like that. It's hard for me to fuck up because all of my fucking up I did in the Subaru. So now I drive good. So good, in fact, that in the winter of 2022 and 2023, which is easily like the hardest winter in living memory for my mountain town, I was driving my 2006 Toyota Prius just fine. And for reference, for the non-car people out there, the Toyota Prius is a front-wheel drive brick with god-tier weight distribution. And I drove that thing through conditions that not even truck drivers could make it through. I was just suicidal, no survival instinct in the slightest drove that thing. And I was good. I was Jay chillin', right? But when I come back with Steve, winter's like at its very end. Mama Winter, she's still kicking us right in the fucking dick, alright? She's grabbing those balls, she's getting the testicles, and she's torsioning them, just, you know? So, late March, early May, another huge snowstorm strikes, and the job that I've gotten is in a smaller, further mountain town. Should I have driven Steve with bald tires all around and rear-wheel drive only on what is essentially a sheet of straight fucking ice? No. Did I drive Steve on that? Yeah. I'm not an idiot about driving in the snow, so I'm definitely not doing freeway speeds, going 30. And this is when, important bit of context about my state comes into play here, which is that they'll give anyone a CDL, including an actual fucking toddler who just escaped from the special ed classroom, which is who must have been driving the semi-truck that cuts me off. Me realizing, shit, that guy's right in front of me, doing less than half my speed. You know, as soon as that clicks, that's in the old noggin, I've got two options here, which is one, hit the semi. Now, Steve is, you know, a steel brick with nothing but hatred for himself and anything else on the road, but I don't think Steve is going to survive a semi-truck. So, option two, brake and or change lanes, which will cause me to spin out. So I get on the brakes, do a full 360, feel like a fucking idiot. I manage to counter steer, wrestle back control. The problem is that I am used to correcting front wheel drive cars. Or all wheel drive cars. All wheel drive is easy, it basically does it fucking for you. Front wheel drive is also easy, because you just get the car going, facing the way that the car is going again, and then you get on the gas a little, right? So I get Steve facing the way Steve is supposed to be going, get on the gas a little. And yeah, my ass end spins back out. So at this point, you know, I'm significantly slowed down, thank God. But I'm also thinking, well, shit. Well, shit. So I decide between correcting Steve again and, you know, possibly getting into a car accident. Because do you think I have insurance at this time? I'm not admitting to any kind of crime. Moving on, I decide that I'm going to park Steve in the ditch. So I keep Steve sideways, and then I wait for there to be a big enough gap in the highway markers, and I just punch the gas and leave Steve in a ditch. Steve is really stuck. So when the fire truck that comes up, because there's been a worse accident further up the freeway, it's like, hey man, you good? And I'm like, yeah man, I'm good. He's like, okay, we're going to send a highway patrol officer out to help you. And I'm like, so a highway patrol officer comes out and he's like, you good, dude? And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm good. He's like, okay, well, I gotta go help some people further up the road, so you just hang tight. My truck is in the ditch. I'm not fucking going anywhere, but thank you, officer. Have a great day. Second guy comes up, same thing. Third guy comes up. He thinks I can get it out of the ditch because at this point it's like 10. You know, the sun's up, it's starting to melt. I've been in the truck for 5 hours. This should be fine, right? No. Cue about 30 minutes of this highway patrol officer stating, and I quote, "These are the baldest fucking tires I've ever seen intact, and what the hell is wrong with you? And you dumb son of a bitch." None of which was necessarily uncalled for. Eventually he drives away too, and I call up a friend of mine who calls up his boss. His boss, with his truck, gets Steve out of the ditch. I drive off unharmed. Nothing is really hurt but my ego. Steve is fine. But I mean, it's almost kind of good that I spun out the way I did, because further up the freeway, where the fire truck and the 3 highway patrol officers went, a couple of people died. And that's probably where I would have been if I had kept chugging along, so all's well that ends well, right? Now, in case you didn't get the gist by the missing parts list, Steve was just straight up a piece of shit. Things check engine light been on probably since he was made, but you know, I saw myself in Steve, this little shitbox car. Partly because everyone was like, wow, Steve and another pen's legal name that I'm not telling you are exactly the same. I've never seen a more fitting pair. So when all of my friends were like, yeah, dude, Steve is a shitbox. You shouldn't drive this to this vacation to Joshua Tree National Park we're taking. I went, fuck you! And I drove it anyways. You might think that this would end poorly, but I had at this point replaced 3 tires. I was no longer driving the baldest fucking tires someone had ever seen intact. I had also, at this point, changed the brakes, fixed the power steering. In this story, we've got me, Penn. We've got my roommate, Soap. We've got a guy who, for the sake of his privacy, we'll call Levi. Levi is Soap's boyfriend. And we've got a really long gamer tag that I didn't remember. The only word I caught of it was cable, so that's what you're getting called, dude. Nothing personal. We've also got 2 other people who we'll call J and N for the sake of this story. And for reference to everyone's personalities, like Cable and Levi and Soap are like my 3 closest friends. N is, he's really good looking, but he's like emotionally distant, so he's good looking in the you're gonna want to try to fix him kind of way. And Jay is the victim of that. Which is not to diss on anyone, because N is a great guy. Really like him. Jay, I've had my differences with Jay in the past, but she's also the kind of person who has so much in common with me that we really butt heads a lot. You know, it can be a little gnarly, but I've made my peace with it now. So, me and Soap, Cable, and Levi depart in 2 different cars. I have done all my fluids, basic maintenance. Steve is probably in as good of condition as Steve has been within the last 2 decades. Levi, you know, he didn't really drive cars that leaked fluid. And it did not cross his mind to check his fluids before we left. So, you know, Levi, in his little 2014 Subaru Crosstrek, takes off, just blitzing down the 395 southbound. Good for him. Steve has a strict governor, which means that the engine shuts off if you do more than 90. And you have to really fucking push it to get the engine to do 90 anyways. So I'm cruising at a nice little 70 miles an hour, stopping at every other gas station or so to let Steve rest and check all the fluids, make sure they're all good. So we're about a quarter of a way into the trip when we receive a call from Levi. Levi calls Soap and he's like, hey babe, my car broke down. Understandably, we're both like, that's a little odd. We didn't think it was this car that would break down. Mentally, I'm like, oh, doggone Steve again, bitch. Rah, rah, rah. You know, I'm a little braggadocious, but primarily I'm like, shit, that's tough. What happened? Because, you know, I know a bit about cars. I work on cars a little bit as a hobby thing. So if it's something minor, I'm pretty sure I can get Levi back up and running. And he goes, yeah, well, I had cruise control on at 80. going over the Sierra Nevada mountains, and my car made this awful grinding noise, and then it stopped. And I think, oh fuck. So Levi's car did what makes Subaru a Subaru, which is to say, it leaked coolant. And then Levi's car, with no coolant, was set to 80 at cruise control, going over the Sierra Nevada mountains. So understandably, after, a little bit of this, just a few hours, all that heat, his engine block worked, and his internal combustion engine stopped being internal combustion or an engine. So we're all like, damn, there's a huge fucking monkey wrench in all of this. Anyway, Levi gets towed back to Lee Vining. Him and Cable ride in his car as it's being towed. Me and Soap drive back there too to figure out what's going on. Levi and Soap agree to stay the night in the hotel because, of course they would. They had their fun. Me and Cable hop in Steve, and we have all of the group's camping gear with us. And we were like, we've still got a lot of daylight. We'll be there by sunset at 6. So 10 hours later, at 2 a.m., we make it. It's so fucking late, and we don't even really fucking know where the camping ground is, because it wasn't our asses who booked that shit. Cable's like, fuck, how's the sleeping arrangement gonna work? And I'm like, just take the cab, bro. And I pull out my sleeping bag. I just pass the fuck out on the ground next to Steve. And it is still, it's May at this point, but it's still very cold. The whispers of winter refusing to let go. So, there's still frost on everything. You can still see your breath. That doesn't matter one bit, though, because you know what happened? I made it. That's what happened. Steve made it. You might be thinking, wait a minute, what about the other two people you mentioned in this story, Jay and Ed? Now, for reference, this whole J-Tree thing was Jay's idea, but a lot of planning got kicked to me and Soap. It's water under the bridge now, but at the time I was like, wow, that's not cool. Where are Jay and N? Jay and N decided that they were going to depart a day later in N's Toyota van with a bad catalytic converter. If I had a nickel for every Toyota I knew to have a bad catalytic converter, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. But, of course, they were planning on departing before Levi's car broke down. You might think, why would that change anything? I mean, it shouldn't change anything, right? Jay hears that Levi's car breaks down and tries to cancel the entire thing. That's right, she tries to cancel the entire thing. So, Jay's like, but it's so stressful. And we're all like, dude, 2 of us are on the drive there. 2 of us are stranded in this small town of Lee Vining in California, which is population fucking nothing and destination nowhere. What the fuck do you mean too stressful? So, eventually Levi and Soap talk to Jay and N specific, respectively. And eventually, N was always on board with coming, but N was a happy wife, happy life kind of guy. So he's like, okay, well, my girlfriend really doesn't want to go. Yeah, I don't really know what I can do. I mean, I can go without her. The problem was that Jay had a shit ton of our reservations for, the second half of the trip. So no Jay, no campground. A little bit of a problem. Tiny bit of a fucking issue. Regardless, though, after a few hours on the phone, Jay decides that, never mind, I will come. And Dan is like, yeah, I was gonna go anyways, but okay. And they depart, pick up, Levi and Soap from Lee Vining. We get there. We all have a bunch of fun. The second Toyota I know to have a bad catalytic converter was my Prius. And before I sold it, I took out the catalytic converter. And this is important because I have now put the catalytic converter in the back of Steve, and I take the catalytic converter with me on everything I do in the campground. Camping catalytic converter. I lit a fire, camping catalytic converter. I'm eating, camping catalytic converter. I'm just posing, camping catalytic converter. Great time. We all get fucked up, really fucked up. Skip arm in arm, we hike, we climb. Cable was so hungover one of the days that we drove to a rock wall to climb that he had to sleep in Steve, which was pretty funny. Regardless, J-Tree was a blast. But there is a part 2 to this, which is that Cable and Levi, when they had their own car, were planning on going to see Whitechapel perform at the Ace of Spades in Sacramento. And of course, that was when they had a car. Now they don't have a car. J and N definitely don't want to go on that trip. But you know who has a car that fits exactly 3 dudes? Me. So they're like, hey, Fen, if you drive us to this concert, we'll give you some gas money and we'll pay for your ticket. And I go, sounds cool, dude. So, 10 hours later, and the 3 of us are so cramped in this car that no gay sex happened, but like, you were mere seconds away from a slip that would really look like it. Poor Cable, the smallest of the 3 of us, was put in the center seat, which doesn't have any legroom at all because that's where my fucking gear shifter is. So the guy's like hips and shoulders were chafed. It was the experience ever. You know, it was the ride. After 10 hours of that, we get to Sacramento. We go, we have a blast. I get so fucked up on weed that like I have a hard time walking. Get dragged into a mosh pit. Also get weirdly hit on by multiple people with boyfriends, which apparently is pretty common at metal concerts. Awesome fucking time. Some loser with a fucking fart can on his WRX just drove past. Anyway, awesome fucking time. I love metal concerts now. But eventually the fun was over. We all get back, and Steve, we don't have a hotel, and it's like 11. What do? We drive back to where we live. That's right, we drive back to where we live. Now, for reference, it's still snowing on Donner Pass, which is where we need to go. So I go, this is a terrible idea, guys. Are you really sure you want to drive Steve into this? And Levi goes,
keep fucking driving.
So I keep fucking driving, and Steve summits Donner Pass. This is probably something Steve shouldn't have been able to do, especially because while we were in J-Tree, I had to change a tire again. So, regardless though, we survive. The trip is over. It was summer now, and it really didn't feel like it should have been summer, one of those kinds of years. I went from working a job further into the mountains, you know, the one that I spun out going to. That kind of job made you want to fucking kill yourself for 11 hours a day, so I instead opted to work a job that made me much happier, but paid me much less. Like, financially, terrible fucking decision. Don't ever do some shit like that. But soul-searching wise, it was great. And at that job, I met the girl that I'm dating now. That was pretty cool. So, you know, it's while I'm broke as a fucking joke because I'm making literal minimum wage, that I drive Steve to go pick up my girlfriend for a date. Now, 2 pieces of context here. My hometown has a beltway that wraps around and goes through the town. Pretty cool, whatever. Second piece of context. I had been rear-ended the week before this story took place. Now, of course, Steve, being, you know, steel and having hatred for himself and anything else on the roads, was just fine. It was another dent in my rust bucket. What the fuck did I care? The Dodge driver who rear-ended me was okay with replacing his grille and his front bumper and probably his radiator if I just didn't tell the insurance companies. I just keep on driving. Now, very foolishly, I did not check my lug nuts. What are lug nuts, I hear you asking? Lug nuts are what hold your tire onto your fucking car. There's studs that come out that you attach the tire to, and that is how the tire stay on when spinning. Now, why would I need to check the lug nuts after being rear-ended? In theory, I shouldn't. In reality, so I'm going over a bridge, and I hear a popping noise, and this is as I'm braking. That might be a problem. I hope it's not my brakes. I just did those. And the answer was, it wasn't my brakes. Steve hits the fucking stanky leg, and my car starts bouncing up and down like it has a hydraulic system installed. So I park in the nearest arts and culture center, and stupidly, the first thing I inspect is my driver's side brakes. And I go, well, it's not the brakes, because that thing looks fine. And I walk around the corner of my car, and I see my tire, which is supposed to be on there like this, on there like this. My tire, which is supposed to have 5 lug nuts holding it on, currently has 1. Now, what would you do in this situation? A, cancel the date and fix your car, or B, thug that shit out. I just borrowed a friend's car and still went on the date. It's a fucking blast. And then, same friend's car. I'm like, hey, dude, you want to help me get Steve out of this parking lot? Because me and this friend, who we'll call Box in this story, have a mutual friend who is a mechanic by trade and an alcoholic by poor life decisions. He's a great guy. Really love him. I don't even know what I'm going to call the mechanic. We'll just call him the mechanic, but I love the mechanic. The problem is, the mechanic lives all the way across town, like literally the other end of town. So I bend a stud back into place just enough to get 2 lug nuts on, and these 2 lug nuts are right next to each other, and for reference, don't ever fucking do that. So I have my lug nuts back on, and I start driving, and I take a break every mile or so to retighten the lug nuts, and I get some Maverick coffee with Box, and that was a mistake, because about 2 hours into this adventure, I feel like I'm gonna shit myself, so I find the nearest porta potty and I take the spookiest dookie of my life. But eventually, at the early hour of 4 a.m., we make it to the mechanic's house, and we just leave Steve for a few days. And I go back to Box's apartment where I crash until I can be there with mechanic to help fix the car. When me and my girlfriend first started dating, she mentioned that we should go to a Sublime with Rome concert, and one thing about me, when a pretty girl tells me something that I should do, my first response is typically, yes ma'am. So I go and I buy the tickets. Ticket singular. Her and her older sister had already bought their tickets, and that's important because I'm used to the kind of venue where you buy a ticket and you're in the pit. There are no seats. The tickets that I bought were not that. Not that at all. So the day the concert gets there, I've had this ticket bought for like a month already, and my girlfriend and her older sister get their bracelets, and I go, okay, here's my bracelet, and the person goes, your seat is here, go sit down, and I go, wait a fucking minute, what? So yeah, turns out I bought a seated ticket, they bought general admission, and this was going to be a problem because I was thinking, shit, how am I going to get past this one? My first thought was to very confidently walk in there, and that worked almost. I made it past 5 of the 6 bracelet checkers that they had, but lesson learned, you cannot defeat an old butch lesbian. She got me. So I go sit down and I'm thinking, okay, well, when the crowd gets a little rowdy, I'm just going to dive in, because there's going to be so much going on that no one's going to notice. And my girlfriend's older sister goes, I have an idea. Gives me her phone with her ticket, because they're not scanning the tickets, they're just seeing that it's a general admission ticket and giving a bracelet. I go back there and I go, oh, look, I traded my ticket. Can I have a bracelet now? And they go, yeah, you can have a bracelet now. And I go, yay. So I go in there, we have a blast. You might be thinking, what does this have to do with Steve? Simple. After the concert, we drop my girlfriend's sister off back at their apartment. My girlfriend's staying the night at my place. We're both hungry. So I'm like, where do you want to eat? And she's like, McDonald's. So, McDonald's it was. One thing about Steve, it's a 94 Ford Ranger with no creature comforts at all, so of course there's not electric locks. There's a little manual ones that you push down when you want to lock the door. So I push down my girlfriend's side after she gets out, and I push down the driver's side as I get out, and I throw my door closed, and just before the door closes, I realize, oh fuck, the key's still in there. So there's a very loud no as the door closes. I start very, very loudly complaining, oh shit, I locked the keys in the car, I'm gonna have to break the window, in the hopes that someone would come to my aid. And sure enough, someone did come to my aid. Why did this dubious man with a car full of shit have the exact tools needed to break into a car? Not my concern. My concern was, what could he do for me? So we started using his reputable car thieving tools to pry the door of Steve open by about an inch before using a hanger to roll down the manual crank windows, because if we could do that, we could get to the door handles, which were designed in such a shitty way that we could not open them with said wire hanger. Now, of course, this takes a while. So Sublime with Rome is done by like 9, and we stop at McDonald's at like 9:30, and we're there until about 1. Now by midnight, I am about ready to just pick up a crowbar. You know, I have had enough of Steve. You know, his doors started opening on his own in this time. That was horrible. I've had enough of Steve. I'm done with this fucking thing. I am gonna make it pay, bro. Even though it was my mistake. So I have the crowbar, and my girlfriend goes, no, 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 wait, hold on, I can get it. And I go, yes, ma'am. She drops a weight onto the wire and uses that to pull down the window crank just enough to get her arm in and open the door. Day is saved. So this one's a pretty short story, but it ends pretty well. Summer was losing its waterfall. A close friend of mine who I hadn't seen all year because they live a considerable ways away from me was celebrating a very important 1-year anniversary to them, so I figured I'd go and spend it with them. We decided what we were going to do was see Loathe perform live with 3 Days Grace and Chevelle. Loathe was fucking phenomenal. Go check out their stuff if you haven't. Great band. They're performing in Reading, so I changed the oil and a tire on Steve again, and I'm off. I'm on my way. Down 395 northbound this time, and that's the route I take to Reading, which is where I'm picking up my friend and where the concert is. Now, of course, have you ever taken 395 northbound to its very end at night? Pretty terrifying, not gonna lie. It was also raining the entire time. Steve doesn't handle water well at all. Pretty terrifying. I'm pretty sure if the humid got too high, Steve would start sliding. So, you know, the roads are slightly moist, and I'm thinking, ah, shit. And then there's, you know, desiccated deer in the middle of the road, and I'm thinking, what the fuck kind of horror movie aesthetics is this? And then there's fog that reduces my visibility to almost nothing, and I'm thinking, ah, great, I'm gonna die, aren't I? And then there's the ominous figures on the side of the road that I, still don't really know how to feel about, and I was like, man, I'm not stopping this fucking car. So I stopped the car once on the drive to piss, and the entire time I was, you know, holding a knife, thinking like, ah, shit, I'm gonna die with my dick out. And I'm not even gonna be hard. I'm gonna die with my dick out soft, and that is just a shameful way to go. Alright, because like, if it's hard, at least whoever finds the body is gonna go, you know, boner. 6.5 inches, nice curve to the left. It's gonna be fine for my dignity. But soft, they're gonna shrimp dick. So that's what I'm worried about. But luckily I make it, and the figures stay in the woods, I guess. So at 3 a.m., I pull up to Reading. I pick up my friend from the train station. We go to Denny's till 5. It's a blast. I'm so exhausted that I not only white girl a curb, I just straight up roll over it, which is pretty impressive in Steve, who is, for reference, lowered. You know, and then we saw Loathe. We did some stuff around Reading, which is an interesting town. I mean, it'll probably be cooler when it's bigger, but for the size it is, it's alright. And after we were done in Reading, we decide that we're going back to the outskirts of San Francisco where my friend lives. So I drive Steve back there, and after a brief while there, it was time to go home. So I thanked my friend for their hospitality and for the great time, and I started back. And it was not the drive back that did me in, no. It was the return to my hometown. See, in the northern half of my town is my parents' place and my, at the time, boss's place. So I go to pick up my check because I missed, you know, check day because, of course, the company I worked for at the time didn't do direct deposit. Why would it do that? That's too easy. And I go see my younger siblings, and while I'm at a stoplight there, I notice, Steve is awfully rolly today. I don't think you should be rolling right now. But then the light turns green, so I don't really question it, which was my final fatal mistake here. So I leave my parents' place, get on the freeway to go to the rock climbing gym that I work at / am a regular climber at, where all of my friends are. And it is getting off of the freeway to, you know, get to the climbing gym that something horrible happens, which is, you know, I'm braking, as one does on a freeway off-ramp, And then the brakes get squishy, and I go, that's a problem. And then the brakes stop working, and I go, shit. You ever gotten off of the freeway with no brakes? It's a kind of thing that'll make you think nothing but, shit. Luckily, Steve is a manual, so I start really aggressively downshifting in a desperate attempt to get the engine to brake for me. But by the time I get to the bottom of the off-ramp, the light's still red. You know, I tried turning the car off and pumping that parking brake that never worked. Nothing. So I turn the car back on, light's still red. And at this point, I'm like, oh, well, nothing I can fucking do about it. May as well just commit. So, I commit. Run the red light. Roll through. And then, of course, because the streets have to have more stoplights, why would they not have more stoplights? I have to put the truck in reverse to keep it from rolling into intersections and traffic. And the entire time I'm thinking, wow, what the fuck? For some ungodly reason, it just didn't click in my brain that, like, I was in mortal peril at that moment. Like it registered that this was a huge problem. This was a massive problem. But what it didn't register was that maybe I should have just parked the truck, so I'm still like, ah, man, gotta get to the climbing gym. Nope, there go my brakes. Ah, man, gotta get to the climbing gym. And with no brakes? Ugh, what a drag. So I make it to the climbing gym, go inside. Everyone's like, hey man, how are you doing? And I'm like, I almost just died. And naturally I decide that that's it. You know, I've put hundreds of dollars of parts into Steve. The guy who gave me Steve, who we mentioned at the very start of the story, has just been absentee. So, like, for reference, throughout all of this going on, my uncle told me 3 different times that he would have the car done by this month. And then every time the end of that month would come around and he just wouldn't have the car that I paid for done. So understandably, I'm like, wow, holy shit, your negligence literally just almost killed me, dude. What the fuck? Not to mention, there's also the fact that brake cylinders, master brake cylinders, work in a very specific way, which is there's half of it dedicated to the front brakes, half of it dedicated to the rear brakes. Now, I had replaced and repaired a lot of things on Steve, but one thing I hadn't replaced or repaired was the brake line, because I was told that it needed a whole new brake line, which is a little bit of a pain in the ass to get. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. Bear this in mind for later. Steve gets impounded. My diddly dumbass goes, ah, fuck. I go get Steve out of impound after, like, $400. Impounding is a scam, by the way. I don't think that shit should be legal. I don't think that should be as grossly profitable as it is. Topic for a different video. Get Steve out of impound, have Steve towed out to my parents' property in the outskirts of town, and then I get under the car to look at the brake lines, because there's not supposed to be brake lines to the rear. It's supposed to be cinched off where it was torn. And what do you know? The brake line's not torn, it's just cinched off, right? Which leads to the hypothesis that the back half of a master brake cylinder can fail, by my understanding, before the front half does, and vice versa. So it's very probable that I only had front brakes because someone before me noticed that the rear brakes weren't going to work anymore. But of course, there's also the fact that when I take the brake shoes off, because this is a 94 Ford Ranger, fuck you and anyone who wants to work on it, especially the brakes. When I take the drum brakes off and look at the brake shoes, one side, it's fine. It's untouched. It's pristine. Another side is completely gone. Those among us who have worked on brake shoes, you know that it's a horrible experience. I'm pretty sure it caused an entire wave of domestic abuse across America by angry mechanics. I know me personally, I tend to be a calm, patient guy, but working on brake shoes and having to try to get everything precision lined up elicited from me a monster drinking, slur yelling, indignant upper middle class white teenager named Kyle Rage that I have not seen in me ever before or since. I'm talking, I was so angry that past a certain point I just started punching the truck. repeatedly. I was worried I was going to knock it off of the tire jack that I had it on. So eventually I decided, you know what, this is fucking stupid, and I park Steve, and I go about organizing a new car to drive, and I talk to my uncle, and I go, hey dude, yeah, so your piece of shit truck almost just killed me. We're gonna need to work something out. We worked something out, but if you're ever in Salt Lake, do not let any dude, I mean any dude, who used to own his own shop but doesn't anymore and smokes a lot of weed, work on your car. Don't let him fucking touch it, bro. D1 uncle hater till I die because of this event. I paid the dude almost $3 grand, and then he was like, fuck you, dude. You want the shit you paid for? Yeah. Yeah, so fuck that guy. Hope that dude stubs his toes. Like, I'm not talking like bad injury, I'm talking about like annoying bruise. You know, uncle hating aside though, I, organize the sale of Steve. I no longer own him. And I organize the purchasing of a new car that has its own quirks, and I ride off into the sunset. The thing about Steve that's really tragic is, for a significant amount of time, I was the dude with the truck for a pretty large amount of the 18 to 24-year-olds. Some people started playing like Slug Bug with Steve, where they'd hit each other every time they saw me driving around town. Steve was iconic. Steve was charming. Steve was so much. My girlfriend loved Steve, which really speaks to how incredible she is, because me personally, if someone pulled up and it was Steve, I don't know how I would feel. And I really enjoyed Steve too, as much as like I don't really hate to admit it, it's just kind of sad to reminisce upon. Driving Steve was fun. You know, stick shift is great. I love going through downtown in a stick shift car because it's like a silly little game.
You know, I'm at a stoplight and it's 1, 2, 3. Oh, stoplight again. Neutral. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, pedestrian.
Neutral. You know, it's amusing, and I just don't get that anymore. You know, an automatic car feels less like driving and more like steering. And truth be told, I wouldn't have put all of the money and parts and time into Steve if I didn't really like it. But tragically, the little bastard had to go and break my heart. And that's the most Steve stories to ever Steve. With that, we did it. I'm planning on this being my very first video back on YouTube. Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy Hanukkah. I think Kwanzaa happens around this time of year, too. Any other winter solstice-y themed holidays? Hope you're all enjoying it. This doesn't fully answer the question of, like, where the fuck was I during 2023? Not gonna lie, a lot of this year sucked. Moving out is fun, kids. Procrastinated as long as humanly possible. But regardless, you're here, you watched the whole video. Thank you very much for that. If you're new here, which would be pretty surprising because my reach on this video is going to be dog shit, calling it now, go ahead and just press subscribe. You've been listening to me for a while, just press the button, alright? Will there be more Steve content? No, but there will be more of Another Pen until the vengeful spirit of Steve comes back to take me out March 25th, 2026, but that is a few years away. So go ahead and just push the button. If you're not new here and you'd like to support in a different way, best thing you can do is subscribe to the Patreon. If you like my content, pay me to make more of it, because I love making content, but I love paying my bills, because I need to pay my bills to make content. And anything I can get to help with that is greatly appreciated. As always, huge thanks to the patrons, those that remain, because the hiatus did cause me to lose a few of you. The support really does mean the world to me. And also, huge thanks to my new editor. This guy has been watching the channel for a while. Unlike the last editor, I'm pretty sure there's going to be no weird tomfuckery. And he does really great work, so this is not the first video we've worked on together, but it is the first that's going to be uploaded. Everyone say thank you, Lucky, in the comments down below. And without further ado, the one word that every YouTuber ever beats worse than a dead fucking horse. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great time, and until next time, Memento Mori.